Welcome once again to the Debunking Economics podcast. I'm Phil Dobbie and Professor Steve Keen is with me as well. We've talked a lot about the importance of energy to the economy. In fact, is it so important that those with energy resources will always be the winning economy with a positive trade balance? Is energy efficiency a race to the top, in other words? That's today on the Debunking Economics podcast. Well, we have talked about energy as being the real driver of an economy. And Steve, you reckon the formula for production is wrong. It's not a function of capital and labour. You have to include energy in there. And I guess the question is, where does it go in? Because, I mean, capital and labour, they're almost interchangeable, aren't they, really? Because if you've got lots of people, they're just bad consumers of energy because they're not as efficient as machines. Whereas if you invest in capital, then you can automate stuff. And so you get a better return. So capital and labour are one thing. The other input certainly is energy.
Well,
isn't
it? The moment is the machines are what determine your capacity to turn energy into useful work or into use products which embody useful work. So the machines are doing. This is so different to say 250 years ago when so much of the work was done by manual labour directly. The manual labour these days is really there to control the machines, sometimes to repair the machines. I think I posted a photograph on Twitter. People may have seen it, watching two engineers working on the nose wheel of my plane that I was flying back from Amsterdam to London in last week.
But soon, machines are going to be fixing machines soon, though, aren't they?
Machines will be fixing machines at some stage, and that is certainly the direction we're heading in. So your labour input is now ready to control the machines, to do what's necessary to make the machines function. And that labour is going to continue declining over time.
Yeah.
And what you see in terms of countries which have had enormous growth is they've used those machines to harness more energy and harness it more effectively. It isn't necessarily more efficient about how that's done, because we often have ended up using, when we make something more efficient, we end up using more energy with it rather than less.
Yeah.
It's really been an increase in the amount of energy throughput.
But yes, it's the amount of energy you've got. So the amount of output that you can produce as a country or as a company is dependent on the amount of energy you've got access to, or the amount of it, or the cost of that energy and how efficiently you're using it. Is obviously
and how you transform it. So of course, Japan's got almost no domestic energy sources, but clearly has been an extremely successful country in transforming the energy that it imports into useful products.
Yeah.
So that's the bottom line. Of success.
Right, okay, but and it's, good on them for doing that. If Saudi Arabia had done the same, then they'd be doing really well, wouldn't they? Because they've got access to, for a long time have had access to relatively cheap energy. They just haven't used it to produce other stuff. If they had used that energy to manufacture, and other energy-rich countries did the same, then non-energy producers, they'd be basically stuffed, wouldn't they?
Well, this is where actually Norway's a good comparison, because Norway's another oil-rich country compared to Saudi Arabia. And what Norway did with its, I'm not going to say it's a perfect country by any stretch of imagination, but what they did was say, we're going to get this enormous surplus out of North Sea oil. We're going to use that twofold: one, to build up a huge sovereign wealth fund, but also, secondly, to improve our infrastructure and our technology. And Norway was a very, very rural, I'm still going to use the word peasant. I better not use the word because I've got quite a few good Norwegian friends. G'day, Trond. But it was a very rural-oriented, low-tech society 40 or 50 years ago. And courtesy both of their own decisions to raise their technological level, but also courtesy of using the oil money to do that, it's now one of the most successful industrial nations on the planet. So you can do it. Now, what Saudi Arabia's done, it's just enormous wealth. We've seen the scale of the billionaires that have been created by the sheikhs at the top of the system. However, they have started to realise that they're going to run out of oil one day or not be able to sell oil at some stage. So I understand there's actually quite a large devotion of money now to building solar technology in Saudi Arabia. And that may be their effective replacement for when the oil is no longer usable.
But what a surprise that they didn't, that's happening. It would come as a surprise to no one. But surely they would have thought decades ago, hang on a second, we've got all this energy. There's an opportunity for value add. We can use it as an input to the manufacturing process. If we own that manufacturing process here, first of all, we don't have to ship the energy anywhere. Secondly, we've got this relative advantage over those other countries who have to, if they haven't got any fuel, they're going to have to get people to do all the work, fueled by the vegetables they eat. We can do stuff so much more efficiently than they can. Why wouldn't they have done it decades ago?
Partly because they're informed by economists. Economists tell them comparative advantage is what you should be doing. So you should specialise in energy and let other countries specialise in manufacturing. Total nonsense, because what you should be doing is using whatever resources you have to invest and develop new technology and new manufacturing and production capability over time, which is what Norway has done, and also where I'm now based has done. Do you know what the world's second largest exporter of food is? Which country on the planet? Number one is America. What is number two country for exports of food?
I don't know. UK probably exports quite a bit of fruit and veg.
It's a net egg importer, I'd expect.
Oh, is it?
It's the Netherlands, where I am right now.
All right, okay.
It's the second, and the reason is because they've gone for a dramatic increase in the technology level of their farming, and they've actually cut out 90% reduction in water use and almost eliminated pesticides by industrialising in terms of the greenhouses and things like that. And drip irrigation rather than spray irrigation and so on. So a country which has got incredibly high population density and very small amount of land is the world's second largest exporter of food.
Thank God, though, economists have badly advised the nations of the world on this idea of comparative advantage, because otherwise those people who were rich in energy resources would be trying to control the game.
Well, they do to a large degree anyway. But
they'd be able to say, well, not only are we going to charge you a fortune for our energy, we're now going to charge you a fortune for all the goods that are produced using that energy. Yeah,
well, the energy is, if you've got your hand on the energy, then you have an enormous advantage over those who don't have it. Yeah. But of course, what's actually happened, as we've seen in practice, is that countries that haven't had a domestic energy source have actually done better at saying, if we're going to harness that capability to produce goods more effectively. So Japan is the outstanding example, of course. Yeah. But again, we talked a bit in the last podcast, I mentioned Deming's name. Now, why did Japan adopt the ideas of Deming? It's because Deming, being American, tried to persuade American manufacturers after the Second World War that they had to improve their manufacturing techniques and get to take this lean approach he was talking in favour of, rather than the straight stock standard Fordist production line. Let's develop a just-in-time system, not so much on the on minimum of warehousing and so on, but just a process which means you improve the production, a continuous improvement process over time. America, having won the Second World War and being the biggest bully on the planet, well, we don't need your advice. He was completely ignored, and he got an invitation from MITI, Japanese Ministry of Industry and Technology, and Trade and Industry. And he popped over to Japan, and when he arrived there, he said, look, at the moment, when you try to export products, you're going to be producing low-quality stuff. People will laugh at it and say what a joke you are, and they'll only buy it because it's cheap. In 20 years, they'll be complaining about unfair competition from you.
Right.
That's exactly what happened.
And that is because Japan had to be efficient. They had no choice. Whereas you look at places like Saudi Arabia, of course, I mean, they just sell their energy rather than produce other stuff because they've been able to do that. Look, that is the first part in a lengthier discussion. If you want to hear it in full, then you have to subscribe to this podcast and all the others in this series at debunkingeconomics.com. Go to the website and choose one of the plans on the right-hand side, or become a supporter of Steve on the Patreon website. Go to patreon.com/Prof Steve Keen. If you provide $10 or more support to his work each month, then you get access to all of these podcasts for free as part of that $10. And that is this episode. Next time, we're going to explain why the idea of fractional reserve banking is a myth. Bet you can't wait for that one. That's next time on the Debunking Economics podcast with Professor Steve Keen. I'm Phil Dobbie. We'll see you then.